Welcome back to Passionfruit Arts. Today we are in the kitchen cooking up a satisfying and rich soup, sweet potato with greens and sage. It can be made vegan, it's paleo, it's delicious, warming, and check it out. Drizzled with olive oil and toasted sage and garlic. So delicious. Pairs really well with my gluten-free chickpea flatbread known as farinata. So check out that recipe. Enjoy! Cooking can be an opportunity to slow down the mental chatter and get into your body through your senses. So light a candle if you have one. Take 3 deep breaths, one to release tension, one for gratitude that you have food, and one to set the intention of infusing the soup with kindness. Now that you are ready to make this pot of soul-nourishing soup, start with the onions. The rich flavor of this soup comes from the sweet notes of caramelized onions, as well as pungent garlic, mineral-rich dark leafy greens, and earthy sage. Even though this soup is fairly simple and could be made quickly, take the time to cook the onions down in a separate skillet while you are preparing the soup. The result is well worth it. These do take 30 to 40 minutes to fully caramelize, so begin the soup by chopping 2 onions and add them to a hot skillet with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Stir the onions into the oil so they are nice and coated. Add about 1/2 teaspoon of salt to help them sweat. Stir again and turn down the heat to medium-low, remembering to give them a stir every 5 minutes so they don't burn. While the onions are cooking, peel and chop the sweet potatoes. You can save these peels and onion skins, as well as other vegetable scraps, in a bag in the freezer to make vegetable broth later. Homemade broth is economical because you can use up these scraps. It's healthier because packaged broths have added sodium, oils, and other questionable additives like MSG, which is tricky because it's sometimes labeled as yeast extract or natural flavors. And this broth is just tastier because you can add whatever herbs and spices you like. Check out my videos about broths and stocks. I'll put a link in the description below. The soup is blended, so don't worry about getting perfectly even cubes when cutting the potatoes. They just need to be chopped up so they will cook evenly. Give the sage a rough chop to open up the oils. To save time while filming, I brought my water to a boil and then added the sweet potatoes, which can splash boiling water on you. So I recommend adding the 3 to 4 cups diced sweet potatoes, 2 tablespoons of chopped sage, and a teaspoon of salt to around 3.5 cups cold water and bring it to a boil. After it has reached a boil, turn the heat down to simmer, cover, and cook for 10 minutes. Garlic is another essential ingredient to this soup. To easily peel a large amount of garlic, separate the head into cloves and shake the cloves vigorously for 1 minute in between 2 stainless steel bowls or a bowl with a plate or lid on it. The friction loosens the skin right off like magic. This technique can also put a little spring in your step. It's fun. Employ a family member to help shake because 1 minute is actually a long time when you're working out that hard. You might notice the skins don't quite release until you shake them up longer, so turn it into a game and see who can shake the hardest. Ooh, look at that. Come right up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The original recipe that inspired this soup calls for 8 whole cloves of garlic. But when I was in school for nutrition, I learned that the taste of garlic really changes depending on how you prepare it, and I personally like a subtler, sweeter note of this bitey wonder plant. So I've chopped mine super fine here. You can skip this step and just use them whole if you like. The somewhat off color of this soup is due to the dark leafy greens, so call it green soup. It is delicious and super nutritious, loaded with minerals. A great way to get your daily greens in. If you are using young greens like I do in this video, just wad them up in a ball and give them a rough chop so long fibers don't get caught in the blender. You can also use 2 big bunches of kale, chard, mustard greens, or preferably a mix of dark leafy greens. Just remove the stems and give them a rough chop. After the potatoes have simmered in the salted sage water for 10 minutes, add 3 cups vegetable broth, the garlic, remember you can use the whole cloves if you like, and then add the greens to the pot and bring it back up to a boil. Reduce the heat and cook on medium-low for 15 more minutes to incorporate all of the flavors. Remove from the heat and stir in the caramelized onions. To remove all of the flavor from the skillet, just add a ladle full of hot broth to the hot pan and quickly sear the pan bits into the broth and add that to your soup also. If you have an immersion blender, carefully blend until silky smooth. When using a stand-up blender, carefully blend the soup in batches so you don't risk hot liquid bubbling over to the lid, which is a scalding hazard. Pour the smooth batch into a new pot or a bowl, and when all the soup is blended, return it to the cooking pot and stir well to mix the flavors. Taste for salt and pepper adjustments. Add a 1/4 cup fresh squeezed lemon juice to lift the bitterness of the greens. Serve this soup hot with a drizzle of fruity olive oil and a grind of black pepper. To take it to the next level, make a topping by frying sage, little lemon zest, some garlic, pepper, salt, and a dash of whole unrefined cane sugar. Use brown sugar if you like. Fry that up in a little butter just until golden. Serve this satisfying sweet potato and green soup with a spoonful of the fried sage and a couple slices of farinata, which is a traditional European flatbread made with chickpea flour. It just happens to be vegan, gluten and grain-free, and super yummy. Follow the link for farinata and make up a batch to try yourself. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen. Please tap the like button, comment on this recipe, and subscribe to Passionfruit Arts to receive all the latest inspirations to feed your soul.